Welcome to Aussie Lawn Stars.
Welcome to Aussie Lawn Stars. Welcome to the dungeon. This is where I work from. It's a tiny room in my house where there's no external light, so it's a dungeon. Jason, I want to introduce you to the listeners. So we can see behind you, if people are watching on YouTube, TIACS is a brand, and you're, Jason, the co-CEO of TIACS.
Correct. Yeah, that is. For a lot of listeners out there, or a lot of your listeners out there, they may not have heard about TIACS. So today's a great opportunity for us to share the story.
I have seen some lawn mowing tradies running around with TIACS shirts on. And I actually bumped into a truck driver not too long ago that was wearing a TIACS shirt. And I was like, hey, I recognise that. I had a bit of a chat to him. He was good. But yeah, there'll be a lot of people who have no idea what it is, which is why I got you on here. I wanted to have a bit of a chat to you, introduce the lawn care industry to TIACS for those that don't know about it, and encourage them to support it or even utilise its services.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So, Jason, I like to do a little bit of brief intro in terms of who you are before we move into the company. So the first thing I want to know is, do you ride motorbikes?
No, I don't.
People get sick of me talking about motorbikes because any guest that will talk about motorbikes, there's a half hour or an hour on the interview. Go on.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, I've actually got a couple of classic V Dubs that I use to drive around. So I've got a 71 Beetle and a 75 Combi.
Nice.
They're sort of the weekend passions, and to get out. And nothing like getting in an old car and winding the windows down and cruising down the highway at 90 k's an hour. Nothing better.
Well, it is a good solid 39 degrees here right now. So if you're in the V-dub cruising around this sort of weather, you'd be sweating real good.
Definitely cooking. There's definitely the leather seats build up a lot of sweat, and the shorts are definitely wet by the time you get to your location in about 5 minutes.
So leather seats, did they come out original with leather?
They had a type of leather. Yes, they did. The original ones. Yeah. So, but very hard to get seats, traditional seats in V-dub combis. And they're like hen's teeth, and they're worth it as well.
I bet they are. So have you done a full classic restoration on these, or are they going the modern rusty look, rat rod type?
Yeah, no, both have had a restoration, which was before my time. So the 71 Beetle we've had for a few years now. It's the traditional cream V-dub Beetle that you would have seen driving around. With still got the original seatbelts in the back. Actually, everything else has been updated in it. But then the Combi's had a full restoration a few years ago. Into probably not one of the common colours that you see. It's a teal colour, so it's like a Tiffany teal colour, so quite a little bit bright.
Stands out then.
Definitely a passion and a joy for us to be able to go camping at least once a month in our Combi when we can.
Nice. Now you look like you're probably about the same age as me, just at a guess. I'm got a little bit of grey coming through in the beard, so I'm like, yeah, you're probably similar age and similar sort of ideas. So it sounds. I like the idea of the classic V-dubs. It's a good hobby to keep you busy and make sure you don't spend all your money on golf or stupid stuff like that.
Well, they're probably the only two cars in my life that'll actually appreciate, not depreciate. So
yeah, that's it. Most of the fun cars depreciate too quickly.
Totally.
Yeah. I've created Aussie Lawn Stars to give you professional help free. And you'll also find Lawn Care Skull Sessions and the Australian Lawn and Garden podcast doing the same thing. On Facebook, you can look up the Lawn Mowing Contractors Australia group or the Australian Professional Contractors group. And if you want help that is personalised and takes you a little bit further, then you should look up Prez Madley. He offers personal coaching, business coaching, and corporate coaching. Email him on thinktankcoaching@outlook.com. You could also book an appointment with my accountants, Prosper Financial, on 0249 77 3363 if you need help getting your business and bookkeeping in order. So, Jason, TIACS is a brand, and I thought TIACS was the founder's brand, but we were just having a bit of a chat before we started. There's the two founders that started the business. How much history can we talk about with them?
Yeah, we can definitely talk about all the history, and I'm happy to, love to let your listeners know about the story around how TIACS was founded and who we are and what we do. I will put it out there that we will be talking about mental health and suicide. So if that does trigger anything for anybody, any of our listeners out there, there is the number for TIACS, which we'll give, that people can reach out to. And there are other numbers and hotlines that people can reach out to. But
now, if you shift your camera slightly to one side, I'll be able to see the whole number, 0488 46988.
That's correct.
That's a great number to call. It's free for people to call. And Lifeline's one of the other ones I refer to whenever we're talking about issues like this. Popular number for Australia and New Zealand, I think.
Yeah, no, they're a great organisation. But for me to talk about TIACS, I really have to talk about Trade Mutt Workwear brand. And for those watching on YouTube, I am wearing one of the Trade Mutt shirts, funky eye-catching shirt. So, Dan and Ed, a couple of young chippies, they met on a building site in 2014. Dan Allen was the qualified chippy, and Ed Ross was his apprentice. They met on a building site in 2014, and then in 2015 they were working on a building site and in Brisbane here on a residential site. And Dan got a phone call from his best mate. They actually can still remember exactly where they were. They were standing up on a ladder, and Dan's best mate rang him to let him know that he'd been just got the news that he was going to start as a full-time mature age carpenter in the weeks to follow. And for Dan, it was a really good moment that he'd mentored a mate that he'd got to know, and he was following in the same footsteps to him. And so that was on the Thursday in December of 2015. If I wind the clock forward 3 days, Dan got a phone call from his best mate's dad, letting him know that his best mate, who was also called Dan, had taken his own life. And for a couple of young chippies, and really for anybody, when we lose a loved one or a mate, there's a lot of grief that comes with that, a lot of emotion. But for anyone that's been impacted by suicide, that losing a loved one or a mate through suicide, there's a lot of grief and emotion, but there's also a lot of questions that just cannot be answered. And what could I have done differently? Why didn't I see this happening and coming? And so there's this range of emotions that sort of followed the period after Dan finding out about that. And really the roles changed for Ed and Dan. Ed being Dan's apprentice, Dan was his support crew, but all of a sudden Ed became Dan's number one support crew, because he had never been impacted by mental health really. From a suicide perspective, he hadn't been impacted by that. So the range of emotions that they went through for sort of the time after was ups and downs. But one thing that they sort of kept on coming back to was, and the discussions that they'd have post this was, mental health definitely within the blue collar industry wasn't really spoken about a lot of. And it was probably, mental health back then was probably being portrayed as, if you think about a bus stop, signage on the side of a bus stop, it was being portrayed as, a guy sitting on a chair with his hands on his head in a lightly dim room. That's how media and marketing were portraying mental health, which we all know that that's not how mental health is. We all have mental health challenges. We all go through different parts of our life, going through different sort of challenges that are presented to us, and that's not us. We don't look like that. And for Dan and Ed, they were sort of having their own sort of challenges, losing a loved one, and that's how it was being portrayed. So they'd actually worked pretty hard, doing a lot of extra jobs that they do as tradies on weekends and nights, and fitting out kitchens and stuff to, get a little bit more cash. And they kept on coming back to this sort of idea around, no one's really changed workwear in Australia. How can we start more conversations in this blue collar industry, and get people talking more and connecting more? And they had this idea of, why don't we just try doing a funky, eye-catching work shirt just to start conversations? And with that, they had some money saved up, and they invested in 1,500 work shirts and 2 laptops. They did their original design. So their original design, which they've still got the drawings of. These guys are 2 tradies. You've got to think about this. They're 2 tradies with the highest level of education that they talk about is a Cert 3 in carpentry. And all of a sudden, they're going to be designing shirts. And so they just went down to Officeworks and got a packet of pencils and a piece of paper and just started drawing different sorts of designs of shirts. And the original designs were a lot different to what they are now. But the concept was that if we could get people wearing shirts and breaking down these barriers and just starting a conversation. And for those that can have seen a Trade Mutt shirt, or you can see me on this podcast today, it's a light, it's bright, it's light, it's Larry, and it starts conversations. So with that, they launched Trade Mutt Workwear brand in 2018. As they say, it's the shirts are designed to make something that's invisible, impossible to ignore, and that's mental health. Because when you see somebody wearing a Trade Mutt shirt, you're either intrigued by, I've never seen that before, and you'll ask a question about it, or 2, you've seen them before and they're an advocate for mental health and breaking down the barriers. So they launched that in 2018, and fortunately for everybody that has bought a Trade Mutt shirt and started a conversation or have reached out to TIACS, it took off for the boys. Other than that, they were going to be stuck with 1,500 work shirts ranging from extra small to 6XL. So luckily for them, it did take off. So that was the launching pad of Trade Mutt Workwear brand. And there's a couple of key things that are on the shirts. Underneath the left breast pocket of the shirt, there's a QR code on all the shirts. If you scan that QR code, you get through to understanding the story about Trade Mutt, but also getting the number for TIACS to be able to reach out for free mental health counselling support. You'll Never Walk Alone sort of sits on all the shirts just here. Dan's best mate, who took his own life, was a mad Liverpool supporter, and that is their catch cry. And it also lets everyone know that they're not alone, and that someone is just a call away or a text away. And then on the back of all the shirts, it's got, this is a conversation starter, and that's the whole premise of the shirt, is to start conversations and break down these barriers that people are experiencing. So that was the launch of Trade Mutt Workwear brand.
Yeah, okay. So we're talking about 2 distinctly separate entities here, aren't we? The Trade Mutt Workwear brand, which is the shirts that you see, and TIACS is the actual business behind it. Now, I think they're both separate businesses, right?
Yeah, they're both separate organisations. So to really explain it in a way, so 50% of the profits from all the Trade Mutt shirts get donated to TIACS. So Trade Mutt is a social enterprise workwear business, and what that means is that 50% of their profits are donated to a charity. And for the boys, it was really around, we want to make a difference. We want to be able to make some of the profit that we're making from Trade Mutt, how can we put it to good use, and how can we make it, worthwhile putting back? And, for them, it was about, do we actually invest into organisations like other mental health organisations that are out there? But for them, the reason why they launched TIACS, which is the social purpose organisation, so they're we're the charity or the non-for-profit organisation. The reason why they started TIACS, which is the acronym for This Is a Conversation Starter. So that's what TIACS stands for. It stands for This Is a Conversation Starter. And the reason why they launched it was that when they started selling the shirts, people were buying the shirts and starting conversations, but there was this piece that was missing, and it was, where do I go to when I've exhausted chatting to my mate? Where do I go to when I've exhausted talking to a loved one? where do I go? And there was nothing really out there for the blue collar industry to get access to support other than, the great organizations like you've already mentioned there with, Lifeline and Beyond
Yeah.
Blue and Headspace and these organizations. But
Yeah.
a lot of the time that's probably more of crisis care, or people are having more suicidal ideations, or so for TIACS, the reason why they decided to just start this organization of TIACS is because they thought that there was just something missing for people just to, when they're having a bad day, or they're going through some relationship issues, who do I reach out to, and how can I reach out to someone that's in a service that's relatable to what I'm going through? So they launched TIACS in 2020.
Yep.
So only just over 3.5 years TIACS has been going. So both Dan and Ed founded Trade Mutt Workwear brand, which is a social enterprise, and then they
Yeah.
also founded TIACS, which is the social purpose organisation.
Yeah, okay. So I guess a couple of stories I can relate to this is that I've bumped into somebody wearing a TIACS shirt, and it is a great conversation starter because you see it, and if you know what it's about already, then you might go and say, hey, awesome shirt, love that you're wearing it, know what it stands for. But if you don't know what it is, it might get a conversation going as well. Either which way, the person wearing the shirt is not a qualified crisis hotline. They can show you the QR code and they can point you to the phone number, and you can find somebody that can actually help you. So that's, I guess, where the two companies work well together, right? Because ultimately, if you buy a shirt, you're helping to direct people to TIACS, but you're also seeing some of the profit of the shirt go towards TIACS to support the support line for mental health.
Yeah, definitely. Like the way that we explain it is Trade Mutt is there to start the conversations. TIACS is there to continue the conversation. And, it's a really simple way to look at it. And, when somebody puts on a Trade Mutt shirt of a morning, and there's lots of advocates out there that put on a Trade Mutt shirt every single day, that we don't want them to be the expert in mental health. All we want them to do is to be able to just start a conversation with somebody, because we all know the impact of what a conversation can have when I'm going through some challenges or some tough times or of your life. Sometimes you just need someone to talk to. Sometimes you just need to get that off your chest. And we all know when we talk about things and we break down those barriers, we feel a lot better for it. And then if I do need that further support, then there's an organisation that can be able to do it. And you're right. I get lots of things. This is my daily wear. And, if I'm traveling and going to different events and people haven't seen me, even if going to the airport, I could have anywhere up to 4 or 5 people that I'd be sitting in the airport or getting on the plane going, hey, I love your shirt. What's it about? I've never seen it. Hey, is it Loud Shirt Day today? And all of a sudden I'm having a conversation with a stranger all because of a shirt. And everyone has got a story. We've all got a story about how we've been impacted by mental health or a challenge we maybe go through. And as soon as we start that conversation with somebody around, this is what the shirt's about, guaranteed just about every time somebody will start opening up around their own story.
Yeah.
And that's
do you have a quiet shirt? If you're going through the airport and you're like, oh, I need some alone time, do you have a quiet shirt to put on instead?
Well, Trade Mutt actually have what they call an undercover mutter. So, and it's just a plain shirt like this. So it'll be a plain green, a plain blue, it'll be a plain black. So sometimes I'll wear those ones as well when we're going through. But, that's called an undercover mutter, but it still has the QR code underneath the left breast pocket of the shirt.
Nice.
So it still has all the sort of things that are associated with it. It just doesn't have this as a conversation starter on the back.
Yeah. And another one that I've been looking at buying a few for myself, but you'll notice, high vis.
Yep.
High vis yellow, and I look at the bright shirts, and I'm like, well, surely they would qualify as high vis too, right?
Well, they don't technically under Australian standards, but Trade Mutt do have a high vis polo shirts that they bring out at different times. So the yellow and the orange are the accredited high vis for Australia's standards. So they do also have shirts like this that are in high vis, and the bottoms are in the funky colours, which is all approved by Australian standards. So there's often different ways that people can jump on and support, and whether it's through buying a Trade Mutt cap or buying a shirt or a polo or a t-shirt through Trade Mutt, that 50% of the profits are actually going to doing good back into the industry that we all work in.
Yeah. And I think that the advantage with that is that you're not just doing good, but you're also, I guess, depending on the clothing that you're wearing, you're also shouting out to other people, hey, look, this is something worth supporting.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what I just mentioned before around everyone's got a story. Often, people want to share their story, and
Yeah.
often we don't feel comfortable of who we actually get the opportunity to share that story with. And this is just another way to break down those barriers. And we've had many a conversation where people have come up to us at different events, and it's the first time they've actually talked about losing someone to suicide because of they saw the shirt or they saw
Yeah.
who we represent, and they just wanted to have a chat.
Yep. Yeah. And I've worked in this industry for almost 14 years now, but my dad started his career as a chippy as well and worked in blue collar industries for a fair bit. And I know it's only now, I'm in my mid 40s, that it's starting to break down some of those barriers that are entrenched in generations of you work hard, you shut up, you don't talk about your feelings.
Yeah,
And, to actually go, okay, hey, Dad, where did that come from? Why
yeah,
is that?
yeah,
And, to be able to talk to you or have somebody else approach you because they see you wearing a funky looking shirt and go, you know what, we can actually talk about this. Not only can we talk about it, but if you're struggling with it, here's a QR code, here's a phone number.
yeah, definitely. And I do what I do. Often people say, why do I do what I do? And as I head into my sort of end of my career, I turned 50 last year. So for me, it's
Yep.
I'm sort of heading into the back end of my sort of career after working
Yeah.
a lot of time in corporate. But I grew up with an old man that served in Vietnam, and I've
Yeah.
seen I've seen firsthand PTSD
Yep.
growing up, and he's still alive today, which is awesome. He's 79 and he's 80 next year, which is great. So,
Nice.
but what he endured, he didn't have a service like TIACS around to be able to support him for many years afterwards. It's all about they used to bottle things up. They didn't talk about
Yep.
things. They didn't
That's it.
express things. So for me, my purpose of why I do what I do, working for a non-for-profit in this space, is an opportunity for me to be able to give back to people in another way, but also, draw on the experience that I've had of, as I said, growing up, the behaviors that I saw Dad exhibit when I was growing up, I just thought were normal. I thought that
Yeah.
him closing down and, sometimes some anger outbursts and, those sorts of things were I thought were
Yep.
just normal, but they're not. They're somebody that's, got some pretty serious demons in their head. And I just wish
Yeah.
that there was an organization that had supported him when he'd come back from Vietnam back in the 60s.
Yeah. And I think looking at our parents' generation, I think that was taught to them from their parents as well, because a lot of them had parents who went through World War One or the Great Depression, various different challenges where you had to shut up, suck it up, don't talk about it.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. But the barriers are definitely breaking down, and we're seeing that through TX, definitely.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've seen numerous ways of dealing with that. One of the classics for me riding motorbikes is talking about people about the black dog, and the black dog and motorbikes are very heavily associated together.
Yeah,
So you know what, if you're having a bad day, if you can't talk about it, jump on your motorbike, get out there and clear your head. And for a lot of people that works, having your Volkswagens, for me, motorbike, something where you can get out there and focus on something else helps to clear your head, but it's not the same as talking about it.
no, definitely not. And I think I only had this discussion this morning with Dan, one of our co-founders. We had a couple of people that are into cars, and
Yeah.
they were talking about their hobby, and they said that for them, they've got a really good hobby, and that gets them out there. But I think when you've also got a hobby as well, you have hopefully the opportunity to connect with new people, and we know that studies have proven that you break down a lot of those mental health challenges you may be experiencing when you meet new people, because you get to connect with a different
Yeah.
person, and you get to have a conversation around that, a different conversation with people that you don't know. and you often get to share your story as well. And I think hobbies are great to get out there, but often sometimes we just need that little bit extra chat with somebody just to be able to process things
Yeah.
in a non-judgmental way as well.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I've grown up religious, so that's not unfortunate. But in Christianity, you're often taught if you are having mental health issues, you don't believe strong enough, you don't believe hard enough. And even, in a place which should be for healing, you're
Yeah.
taught, you're doing it wrong if you have a mental health issue. And so it's great to see now there is a transformation within religious circles like that as well, where they recognize the benefits of having crisis hotlines, of having mental health providers and counselors and psychologists and psychiatrists. So it is great to see that change. But I've been through my own challenges in life. I've been through divorce, separation, child support, custody situations, all manner of challenges. And I've had those challenges within church and within family circles and friend circles. And yeah, sometimes it gets to that point where it's just too dark and you don't want to reach out and talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And I found myself at one stage talking to a complete stranger in a hallway for over an hour, just unloading. And that person, bless them, they were willing to sit there and listen.
Yeah.
But now today, if I found myself in that situation, I've got, like you said, there's half a dozen services in Australia you can call. And that's why I wanted to interview you, because I see within the trade industry, like you've mentioned, there's so many people who have been through their generations taught not to talk about it. And it's like, okay, TIACS is specifically for you and me. And it is, I have asked you, and I want my listeners to hear this as well. There's, how do we support this? What's the best way to support this? And for those that need the service, then, we've already discussed that. There's several ways to get in contact with TIACS if you're in need of somebody to talk to as well. But there's several levels at which people can support this, right? Right from the start of just buying the Trade Mutt clothing.
Yeah, the way we sort of say there's three different ways people can support us, and the number one for us is creating awareness about there is a service available like this to if you're an employer out there and you've got people on the tools, letting them know that there is this service out here, and we've got TIACS is really designed to. Our mission is to break down the barriers associated with blue collar Australians, which are the hardworking Australians and the backbone of this country, from accessing mental health support. And the barriers we want to break down for people is the physical barrier. We're actually a call text service. So there's no face-to-face, there's no getting in a car and driving somewhere, which is a barrier in itself. You don't have to go off and get a mental health care plan with a doctor. You can just call or text that number right now and you'll get through to an intake officer. So for us, it's really breaking down the one physical barrier. The second barrier we want to break down is the financial barrier. So it's free. I was only having a conversation to someone this morning and said that, when they lost their sister to suicide a couple of years ago, they went out and got booked in for some sessions. They went to the doctor, got a mental health care plan. Then they went and got sessions. It was costing them $180 a session. They got 10 sessions, and that was $1,800 that cost them over a period of I think it was around about 8 weeks, I think it was. So TIACS is really about making sure that we remove the financial barrier, so it's free. And then the social barrier that we're trying to remove is that it's okay to be vulnerable. It is okay to open up. It's okay to share your story. And we've really got to flip the narrative around mental health. Like, we talk a lot about physical health in this country and within society. And that's important. Don't get me wrong, that is important. But our mental health is just as important. And if I said to all the listeners out there that are watching or listening today that, I could give you some free sessions and some free personal training sessions at your local gym, most people would take that on and go, hey, I'll go give that a go. I want to get fit and healthy and I'm going to get into the gym and it's free. So why wouldn't I do it? Well,
Yeah.
I'm offering everyone out there today free personal training sessions for your mental fitness with a TIACS counsellor. And
Yeah.
that's what we've just got to shift that narrative that actually if we get our mental health right and we get our head that sits there's a major part of our body, if we can get that right, everything else sort of flows on, within our work, within our relationships, and just our physical fitness actually improves as well. So they're the three barriers that TIACS wants to remove. But going to your point of how people can support TIACS and an organisation like us, one, just create awareness about it. We often say there's 4 reasons why someone will reach out to TIACS. One is they've never used a service like ours before and they just want to understand what it's like, just so that
Yep.
if they've got a mate or themselves need it, they're going to become a better referral for that. 2, you need a tune-up, and we all need a tune-up like our cars. We put them in for a tune-up, but sometimes our
Yep.
mind needs a tune-up. So, you just might need a one-off chat. You might have just gone through some relationship breakdowns or financial challenges, and you just need to navigate your way through that. The third one is that you're struggling and that you're starting to get into a bit of a deeper hole from your mindset. So reach out to TIACS. And the last one is, and we really encourage this, is that you may have a loved one that is going through, could be a husband, wife, partner, child, whatever that is, going through a challenge, but you just don't know how to navigate them through getting help, or you just don't know how to navigate them to get back on track. TIACS counsellors are there to be able to take that call and say, hey, my wife is struggling, my husband is struggling. What are some of the tips and tricks that you can put in my toolkit to be able to help me navigating them in the right direction? So one, awareness is really the key for us. And that number, or going to our website and just sharing that, is really, we're really thankful when people do that. The other one is, the second part is, jump on board Trade Mutt, buy a shirt, buy, a polo or something like that. Not only to really, the bonus for that is that, yes, the profits are coming back to be able to support TIACS, but you're actually going to help start conversations and break down those barriers that we've spoken about. And all of a sudden you become a foot soldier out in the community, wearing these shirts, starting conversations, going to whether it's a work event or whether it's, you're working on the tools. I was in the survey. It was really funny. I need to tell this story because I was in the survey last week and I'd parked up, filled the car up, walked into the servo, and the guy behind me said, hey, mate, I love your shirt. And I was getting into a conversation with just some random guy that was just standing down, lining up behind me, paying for fuel. And I said, thanks, mate, really appreciate it. Head over to Trade Mutt or TIACS and you can learn about more. And he goes, I'll do that. So wearing a shirt starts the conversation and breaks down those barriers. And then all of a sudden we have a movement within our community that it's okay to be vulnerable and it's okay to open up. And then the last one always is, Trade Mutt is one of our funders. We're a non-for-profit organisation. We don't receive government funding. So where organisations can jump on board is whether or not make a regular donation. It could be running an event. There could be a certain mental health day that you've got allocated in your program of events, and you want to do a fundraiser for somebody. Think about TIACS. Because pretty much that money that goes in that we receive goes directly into providing free counselling support to tradies. And that's probably one thing I haven't mentioned is that we support tradies, we support truckies, we support farmers, those working in rural areas of Australia because they don't have the access to be able to get counselling support rurally, any blue collar worker. And the last one is those that care about them. So if you're a loved one of a blue-collar worker, we'll definitely take your call and we'll get you some sessions and get you back on track. And you're talking with a professional counsellor. It's not a support line. It's not somebody that's going to have a chat to you and then they're going to refer you on to another organisation. You actually, when you reach out to TIACS, you're actually speaking to an actual trained professional counsellor, and that can get you number of sessions to be able to get you back on track. And our aim is to get you reaching out to us, having a couple of sessions or whatever that needs, and then getting back on track again, so that then if you need us in the future, we're there for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, yeah, I think one of the things I really like is that it's easy enough for somebody to buy a shirt and a hat, anything else that you've got there. That's you mentioned quite a range of items that people can buy to support, and the item speaks for itself. It certainly reaches out. So that's an awesome way. And I think that's given that Trade Mutt is the separate entity that supports TIACS as a funding partner. It serves multiple purposes by doing that. So that's great. I want to do that myself. I'm going to try and post some social media when I get some shirts so that people can see I'm doing it, and hopefully get more people on board doing the same thing. But a lot of people in business will either have a lot of struggles because they're in business and potentially need a service like this, or they may be like, I've been through the rough. I've been through this and I want to be a supporter. And so they might go, yeah, you know what, I can buy my team shirts, but I'd rather give some money as well. Or, like you say, do a fundraising day and, yeah, do a bunch of different things to support a charity that's worth supporting.
Yeah, no, definitely, and really, we've seen in the last 12 months just a wave of the community reaching out to, there's a organisation out at Maryvale, which is in a country town here in Queensland, and the local pub runs a weekly raffle, and every Friday they run a raffle, and then the money raised from that raffle gets donated back to TIACS, and every year,
Wow.
last year they gave us a check for $2,000, and
Nice.
and the way that we look at it is that no contribution is every contribution is worthwhile. Like whether or not it's a $20 contribution or a $50 contribution, somebody to donate $6 a week, which is a cup of coffee. Can fund 3 counselling sessions for somebody that needs it most in our community. So, where we might have some of the larger organisations making sort of more of a regular donation or contribution, we have got lots of smaller organisations that are just doing these smaller fundraising events. At the moment, we've got a young guy who is visually impaired, who's doing a fundraiser. He wants to run, I forget what the number was. I think it was the amount of people that have actually lost their lives to suicide in kilometres over the year. And he's raising money for TIACS just to raise awareness. Like, he's a bloody legend. Like, that is just gold when people are out there just sharing their story and want to be able to give back in a different way. And, especially within the blue collar industry, I was at a luncheon probably about 18 months ago in Melbourne, and it was more of probably the white collar luncheon that they were raising money for TIACS, and I was the only one there. I was the only one wearing a high vis shirt anyway. Everyone else was wearing suits. But when I got up to talk, I actually started the conversation with before I get into who we are and what we're about, I just want everyone to think about, how did the food on our table that we're just about to eat. I want you to think about who produced it. I then want you to think about how it got to here. I then want you to think about the building that we're in and, the lovely gardens that are outside. It took a farmer or someone working rurally in agriculture. It took a truckie, and it takes a tradie.
Yeah.
And then you've got, the FIFO workers that are, producing energy for us. And, when you take that away from this country, we don't have a country, and we don't have and I had a couple of people that, that were at the luncheon come up to me afterwards and said, what you started with, I've never actually reflected on, because I think we do take it for granted that, the hardworking backbone blue collar Australians, that support us so much are often forgotten about. And, for us, at TIACS and Trade Mutt, it's just really just about starting those conversations. And, you mentioned you've been through a relationship breakdown, and, the number one reason why someone reaches out to us is because of relationship challenges that they're having. And, we're really grateful that people are reaching out to talk them through and navigate them through to be able to get back on track so they can be the best version of themselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you know that Wright has several different mowers to suit different size properties and different types of work? They range from the cute 32 all the way up to the big 72-inch standard that Kyle loves. Well, all the right mowers are built to be used commercially, and they have some great design features to make sure they save your business time and money season after season. Wright have carefully selected each engine to ensure it is very capable, yet fuel efficient for the work it's designed to do every day, all day. One of the features that got me over the line with Wright is the AeroCore deck. It's one of the best deck designs in Australia currently, clearing huge amounts of grass when side discharging, while still great for catching, and it mulches well with a variety of blades. I'm about to throw a set of gator blades on and will be sharing my experience for sure.
It is an interesting one. Looking at the history of Australia in your lifetime and my lifetime, you will no doubt recall, as well as I do, if not better, the change in the way the country has run. And so I'm talking over the 80s, 90s, and through the 2000s through to now. The various different governments have changed focus on different things. And for a long time, they were saying tradies, and the subversive message was tradies are not needed.
Yeah.
And now we're in a situation where we've got hyperinflation and struggling to make ends meet. And all of a sudden, the biggest thing we need is more tradies.
Yeah. And you're right. I think over time it definitely has shifted. And, when you look at the statistics around mental health within the industry, a construction worker takes their own life every second day in Australia.
Wow.
A farmer every 10 days in Australia takes their own life. Like,
Yeah.
If you look at the statistics, it's pretty much most of the suicide rate is within the blue collar industry. And,
Yeah.
7 out of 9 people that take their own life every day are males. So, the statistics don't lie. And, for us, and I think for society is we've just got to be more open to the fact that, there are people out there that are hardworking and that are going through some challenges. And, at the moment we are hearing a lot around financial stresses that are out there with people and within the industry, and, subbies not getting paid because of, the cost of goods, or farmers not getting, the money that they need, they're worth for their crops, because, but then other businesses were making the money out of that. That all adds a lot of stress. And, I think it's really interesting. One of the biggest notable things that I've seen definitely in the last, probably 10 to 15 years is the impact around mental health, is the impact that probably, media and social media are having on our community. And, as much as what social media is a great tool for a business to be able to promote themselves, it can be a sort of a detriment. And one of the things that we saw last year and the year before was a busier call volume day was a Monday in September, and it was after Father's Day, and it was people that had been impacted by the fact that they didn't get the opportunity to see their kids because they're in a separation arrangement and might not have had access to their kids. And that adds another stress and pressure to that individual. And then, they might be on social media seeing all these great photos of, everyone else with their kids and happy Father's Day and all that sort of stuff. But often we forget that there are people out there through periods of time like Christmas and, Father's Days and Mother's Days that don't have the same access, or might not have access to family and friends over those festive times. So often we're just got to be mindful of there's a lot of people out there that probably see things that we do on social media or within the media, but there's a lot of people that are affected by that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I've witnessed that myself with a number of friends, that you get to that stage in life where you go, okay, the biggest struggles for people as they lose loved ones is exactly what you say: Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas. Those annual holiday periods that should be a celebration all of a sudden are really hard days.
Yeah. And, for us, it's about making sure that if you know that you've got a tough time coming up, reach out before you're going to hit that period, because, it's a little bit like, as I said before, around that fitness exercise thing. A lot of people do a lot of exercise to stay fit, well, then sometimes we need to, keep the mental fitness. And I can recall in my previous career that I had to doing this, that we had a paramedic talking at one of our conferences, and the paramedic got up and spoke about the fact that each year he goes to his doctor and gets on a mental health care plan and gets his 10 free sessions that he gets, because the line of work that he's working in, he needs to be able to manage his mindset, because it can be quite a challenge of the mind, turning up to some of the things that a paramedic has to see. But he was being proactive around it. And I thought it was a really good piece where he was showing vulnerability, but also he was trying to keep on top of it.
That's interesting, because I have seen a distinct shift in even the last 5 years, but certainly in the last 20, 23 or 24 years, we're talking 2000s and onwards, those industries where there is known trauma, and I worked in workers' compensation for 5 years before I started working in the lawn care industry, and you could see the traumatic injuries people get in the work environment. But certainly the police force, the paramedics, the armed forces, there's a few other ones. I think security guards, another one. There's just expected trauma that you will deal with in certain industries. And so in that time frame, those services have changed from suck it up and deal with it to preemptively planning and, like you say, personal training to learn how to manage and be prepared and to be able to handle those situations as they arise.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that's probably one of the things that we talk about a lot, or I talk about a lot anyway, I know myself, is, having a couple of really good strategies is having a really good support crew in place. So, who do you call on? Like who's part of your crew? I guess I say it as, we've all got someone out there that we can sort of reach out to, and who's your crew, but also what does your self-care routine look like? And if you've got an empty cup, which means that you're probably going through some challenges, or you just can't get that cup full, I say, you got to look at how you get that cup full, because I can't support what I do every day in this industry of mental health if my cup was empty, because I'm working on a drained tank. And so having a really good self-care routine in place is really critical, I think, as well. Like, often people might get up and go for a walk every morning at the start of the day, or they might finish off with a walk. People might jump in an ice bath every morning, or, they might go and get regular exercise. But just really reflecting on what is your self-care routine look like, and have you got one? Because if you haven't got one, maybe it's time to think about, well, I'm just going to put this into my day. And it might be just going for a walk around the block with the AirPods in, listening to a bit of music for 20 minutes, just to be able to switch off. These things called mobile phones, when was the last time we actually just got to a Friday afternoon and went, actually, I'm just going to switch it off for the weekend and I'm going to put it away somewhere? Because you and I growing up, we didn't have mobile phones.
Yeah.
And we didn't have to rely on anything. We used to worry about a landline, and if we weren't home, we'd miss the call.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, that one, because a lot of us will get little snippets and bits and pieces of advice and okay, a little bit of downtime is really good, but then that downtime becomes that doom scrolling. And it's like, I'm having self-help time, but it's not actually help, it's a hindrance. And there's a number of programs I've seen run either by churches or charities in local communities for depression and anxiety. And I think that's one of those ways which is really good for people to do some preparation and some planning to be able to deal with things as they come up, so that they start thinking about it. And I think those sorts of programs are really awesome to see that they're quite abundant in local communities now, where you can go, okay, if I learn some tips, and like you're talking, that's a little bit of regular exercise, daily exercise, getting out there and going for a walk and being out in the fresh air, getting some sunshine, fresh air, all those things that help to just reset your system, get you away from the screen, get you away from the constant things that are plaguing you so that you can reset. That awesome tools.
Yeah, and I last year actually I had a bit of a rough time. Work was full on, and the pressure was just building up. And
Yeah.
I actually reached out to the boys and just said, "Hey, I'm having a mental health day,
Yep.
which we should have more of." And they went, "Okay, what are you going to go do?" And most people would think, "Oh, you're going to go for a massage, or you're going to go down to the beach, or you're going to just have the day off and go and do all that stuff." And as you say, you end up just downloading and scrolling and doing all that sort of stuff on your phone. I actually said, "Hey, can I come out and pick orders out of Trade Mutt for the day?" And
Yeah.
they went, "Are you crazy?" And I went, "What?" And they go, "You want a mental health day, but you're going to come out and work." I said, "Yeah, but I want to come out and do something that's disconnecting me from what I'm doing now." And
Yeah.
I just went out there, I put some AirPods in, I listened to a podcast, and I just picked orders all day. I didn't look at my mobile phone for the whole day.
Yeah.
And it was just a really good day where I could just go, "I'm here, I'm in presence,
Yep.
and this is where I am." And then I
Yeah.
got in the car and left, and all the emails and all the missed calls, they were still there, and they'll be still there tomorrow morning.
Yep.
But it was just a really good way. And I think often we think that when we have these days, we've just got to go and shut off completely. Just go and do something different.
Sometimes what I'm seeing for you there is that you're getting to see a bigger picture because you're used to being in the office organising all events, organising phone calls and funding and all those sorts of things. So for you to get out there and see the other side of the program is a really good way to balance the perspective.
Yeah,
And
definitely. And I think it's also just you're using different
yeah,
things in the brain, and
yeah,
you're learning a new skill because I'm picking orders with a new machine and all that sort of stuff. And
yep,
but also it's a great way for, team culture. It's a great way for, the Trade Mutt team and the TIACS
yeah,
team to be able to go, "Hey, here's the co-CEO. He's out there just picking orders and got the
yep,
work boots on and getting dirty." And I think
yeah, for
that's
sure.
often we forget those little things can make an impact, not only within your team, but also within your own mindset as well.
Yeah, look, people can't shut me up about mindset at the moment. I think that our personal mindset makes or breaks us. And I see it with people all the time. If you're constantly focused on negatives, then you breed that negative thought pattern. And I'm had to slap myself on the wrist and say, hey, I've been doing the same thing in my own home with my own family of rather than being the positive influence of doing what you might call creating a negative environment in order to try and um, educate or help improve the situation. So rather than focusing on the positives, I've been focusing on the negatives that I want to see change. And
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah, yeah.
got to pull myself back there and go, that's not actually helpful. It's actually regressive instead of progressive.
Yeah, and uh, kudos to you because you recognise that, and you see that, and a lot of people out there don't, and that's the challenge that a lot of people have. They don't see that they're doing that, or see that they can have a positive influence on their family or their friends.
Yeah.
And I think that's where sometimes it's just understanding what are the triggers when I'm going down that path, and clearly you've got them. You understand them, that when I've got a trigger and I know that I'm heading down, I need to sort of redirect back on track again. But a lot of people
Yeah.
don't have that sort of that foresight or that knowing of when a trigger actually happens. What do I do about it? And I think that's why our organisation with TIACS is such a great organisation for people. I recently had a chat to one of the counsellors about someone that rang up around having challenges with managing anger, and
Yeah.
and triggers that were going off. And within 2 sessions, the counsellor was able to give them some things to work on, some tips to do when they felt that coming on. And by the third session, the client that reached out had sort of said, I cannot believe the difference I am. My family's saying I'm different. My family is saying that I'm more positive. And that was
Yep.
just putting in a couple of different sort of mindset things that they could work on.
Yep.
Within 3 sessions, they're back on track again. And I think
Yeah.
that sometimes we don't know what the answers are, so we don't go looking for the answers. But I think often we need to just talk more or reach out to experts in the field to be able to get that knowledge.
I had a very similar situation to that in my previous career where a injured worker had an anger management problem. And they went through about 5, maybe 6 case managers where they would call up angry, abusive, and make death threats. And after a while, the company I was working for saw a pattern with female case managers getting death threats and leaving their job. And so they're like, oh, Gary might be able to do this one. So they sent this angry person over to me for case management. And, I introduced myself, and within 2 weeks he's on the phone. Hey, where the F and heck's my money, and, swearing at me and abusing me. And then I'm coming up there to F and kill you. And I listened to him. Yeah. And when he stopped, I said, hey, I can help you, or I can make this hard for you. I want to help you. Yeah. So let's try again. And he apologized. Yeah. And I looked after him for about 12 months. And in that time, I actually approached it from the point of view of going, I think this guy has a traumatic brain injury. He had literally a work injury, which was a brain injury. So, trauma to the brain. I was like, maybe that's the cause of his anger. So I treated it as if it wasn't actually him and his personality that was like that. It was an external issue. And after 12 months, I called him up and I said, hey, look, Bob, I'm going to have to send you off to a new case manager because your claim is so old that it's no longer suitable for me to look after it. And he just about cried. He's like, don't do this. You're the only one who's ever listened.
Yeah. Yeah. Having somebody that understands and is relatable and can talk you through can make all the difference, And I think when, like, I look at that situation and what I said before of having a support crew in place, through that journey of 12 months, you were his support crew.
Yeah.
And, he probably felt that he could trust you because you were honest with him from the start around, this is either going to be really good for you or I'm going to make it really hard for you. Either way, it's your choice. Yeah. And you put it back onto him. And I think that's where I get this question all the time that, what do I say when when I see somebody's struggling? Or, they've turned up for work, they feel disengaged. I know they're going through something. What do I say? And, the one thing we always say is that just be there to listen. Just, ask the questions and, but you don't have to have the answers. And often people go, what happens if I say the wrong thing? And, they're worried about that they might go and do something detrimental to their life or, self-harm. What we say is, you're not going to have that impact. Someone that is going down that dark hole has probably gone over past. It's taken a while for them to get where they are, but often people just want somebody to know that they can confide in, that someone is going to listen with no judgment, and is going to be there to continue to check in. And one of the things I always say is that make sure you keep checking in with people. And it's not just about one day a year that we have in September that's checking in with, are you okay, mate? And all that sort of stuff. That's good. Then it just, highlights a day. It should be on a regular basis. And, I think that one thing that the boys launched, Dan and Ed launched for Trade Mutt, was it last year or it might have been late the year before? They launched Funky Shirt Friday. And, what Funky Shirt Friday is about is just a ritual that happens every Friday now where we've got organisations and individuals just wearing their Trade Mutt shirt on a Friday just to start conversations. And, as we say, there's no better day to start a conversation than a Friday leading into a weekend. And, because often we see the stats show that there is spikes in suicide rates over weekends. So, it's when people are not at work and they're isolated, they're alone. They might have a lot of negative thoughts. So wearing a funky shirt on a Friday is just another way or another ritual just to start conversations.
Yeah, for sure. And going back to what I was saying about that particular person I dealt with in my previous job, I was given extensive training in dealing with people that had suicidal ideation and anger management issues. So there's a lot of relevance in staying in your lane. And, wearing a shirt and being a conversation starter is awesome, but it's also really smart for you to go, okay, don't freak out if somebody is expressing concerns and really struggling with life. But make sure you recognise the need to refer them on, pass that phone number on, encourage them and check in with them that they've followed up with somebody else to get further help than what you can give them.
Yeah, definitely. And the tech service for TIACS is one of the services I really love because you actually don't have to pick up a phone. And as we know, somebody to reach out and tell their story takes a lot of
Yeah,
courage and bravery and vulnerability. By sending a text message to that number that we mentioned before, can be as simple as saying "Hey" or "Hi," or
yeah,
we get a lot of people going, "Hey, I'm struggling right now. I just don't feel comfortable talking." That's
yeah,
fine. We can do the full sessions via text.
yep,
Um, and we've got some of our counselors have dealt with clients, they've never actually heard their voice. It's all been through text. And
yeah,
it's a really good way for people to feel a little bit more comfortable that, what happens if I don't say the right thing? Or what happens if I do break down and cry? What happens if I do this? By texting, and we have a lot of people that will do maybe a couple of sessions starting off texting, and then they feel comfortable with the counselor and they'll go, hey, can we move to going to more just having a call and having a chat?
yeah.
So,
Awesome.
yeah, it's just
I've
breaking
heard
down those barriers.
I've heard a TED talk along those lines of a company that was started up specifically with the recognition that texting is a way of reaching people with mental health issues, that they won't talk about it on the phone, and so that text
Yeah.
message reach is so much more effective than a phone call in some situations.
Totally. And we have close to 12% of our clients that have used our service have used full text based counseling. So they've never actually spoken to a counselor. It's been through
Yeah,
text. And the one thing, the advantage that also that having text is that you've got a record of the conversation around some of the strategies that the counselors have given you. So if you're having a
yep,
session at 9 o'clock at night and you've just had it with one of the counselors at TIACS and you're feeling really good and you have a good night's sleep, and then you wake up the next morning and go, what what do I have to focus on over the next few weeks? It's
yeah,
all there in your text message. So you can just
yeah,
scroll through and go, okay, I need to do this. I need to focus on goal setting. I need to focus on that. And then all of a sudden you've got all your notes there. You're not actually writing down what I need to do. It's in a text. So there are definitely advantages of the text service compared to giving a call.
yeah. I think it's an awesome service to offer that. Yeah, the reach that it has beyond phone calls for a lot of people. I know so many people who are avoidant of face-to-face interactions and
Yeah.
voice-to-voice interactions.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of, I often think of, when people are going off and they're booked, say for instance, they may be having some challenges with mentally
Yeah,
through life, and they book into their GP and say, you know what, now's the time I'm going to go get a mental health care plan, and they get in the car and they start driving down, and then they get halfway down and they go, I haven't got the confidence to walk into my GP and tell him what's going on, and they get in the car and turn around. Well,
yeah,
by having a call text service, we remove that barrier of people accessing support, and I think from a blue collar industry and traditionally males, one thing that we're sort of definitely feel that we're on the right track with is that we've supported over 18,000 Australians with free counselling support in 3.5 years, and
yeah.
70% of
Awesome.
those have been males,
Mm,
which traditionally is not probably the rate of males reaching out to other support services. So, I
yeah,
think one thing that we always talk about at TIACS is that we're free and confidential, but we're relatable. So our counsellors are definitely attuned to what's happening out within tradies and with truckies and with farmers. So
yeah,
they understand the challenges that are facing those industry sectors.
yeah. That's interesting. I know, going back to what we were talking about with the text service, for my own mental health issues, if I've been struggling with a mental health issue, I don't feel like reaching out to anybody about it. And even to the point where I'm like, oh, should I talk to my wife about it? No, I'll just deal with it myself. It'll be
Yeah,
right. And should I talk to a friend about it? No, no, don't want to talk to them. And you go through that role in your head, and I know for many people that's something that they go through, is that should I reach out? And they might go to that point where they hop in the car to drive to the doctors and they don't get there. They turn around and go
yeah,
home, or or if they are in a dark enough place, they hurt themselves on the way.
Yeah, yeah. And I think when you said, when people are asking the questions, should I reach out? Is actually they're actually answering their own question. Yes, they should.
Yeah,
If they're thinking that, they need to reach out. And we keep coming back, and I've mentioned it a couple of times now, but just think about it as just being part of your mental fitness regime. Like, it's okay to talk to somebody. It's okay to share your story. It's okay to let someone else know that you're going through a challenge in life that you just don't know how to navigate through. And think about it as your own sort of, you're giving yourself a gift. You're giving yourself a gift of feeling really good, because a lot of the time people don't know what feeling good looks like or feels like. And sometimes you just need to chat to somebody. And I think that if we can break down and have more people reaching out, and hopefully, you spoke earlier, Gary, about the generational shift of, us watching our parents and their parents come through. Our aim sort of in TIACS is to be able to have a generational shift in mental health within Australia. If we can get more younger people reaching out now, or more people reaching out to a service like ours, they're more likely, when they get a bit older into the 30s, 40s, 50s, is really when the life challenges hit us, because we're going through relationships, kids, divorce, schools, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
They're going to be more likely to reach out to us, to a service like ours, because they've used it before. And I think if we can just get this generational shift of people going, it is okay to talk about my challenges, it is okay to talk about what I'm going through, they're more likely to open up later on when, let's be fair, I've been through a divorce as well. I know the challenges that go along with that mentally. There's some dark days in that, of understanding, why, what, how, when, all that sort of stuff. And I just wish I'd had someone to reach out to. I was fortunate enough to have my mum when I went through that, just to sort of bounce things off and, stay on the straight and narrow. But a lot of people don't have those relationships with their family members and don't feel comfortable talking about that as well.
Yeah, that was the one thing that preempted my divorce. I knew there was something up, so I asked her. I said, "What's going on?" And she admitted there was something going on.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I guess it's over." And she's like, "Oh, I don't want it to be over." And I said, "Well, okay, then give us a fair shot." And she's like, "Oh, I'm not ready to do that." And I said, "Well, I'm going to talk to my parents."
Yeah.
And she was like, "If you talk to somebody, it's over." And I was like, "Well, there's your answer." And that's the thing. The negative mindset is don't talk to somebody or it's over. And I want to challenge people to think about that, from changing their mindset and going, you know what, the positive way to look at this, the right way to look at this, the best way to look at this, the way to actually move forward is to get help. The one thing that stops you from moving forward is not getting help. So the best way to look at it, getting help. If nothing else, you'll walk away going, that was worth doing. Don't have to go back. But chances are, if somebody gets help once, they'll go, do you know what? That was worth going back for the 8 sessions. That was worth going back for the 10 sessions. That has helped me shift my mindset from that. I want to stay away from this, and talk about some emotions.
Yeah.
Because chances are, if you're going, I don't want to reach out, I don't want to do this, then you're in that negative mindset. And the negative mindset is preempted by shame, guilt, and a bunch of other emotions we could list. But when you break those cycles that are fueled by shame and guilt and self-hatred, and you get help, then you get into that positive mindset.
Yeah, no, definitely great words of advice. And I think we recently had but there's actually on our social media an interview that we had with an apprentice that lost his father, not to suicide, but had lost his father, and he was, first year apprentice, and really he was struggling and was angry with world and angry with life, and people kept on saying, mate, you need to reach out. You need to reach out to somebody. And he kept on thinking, no, I'm not going to do it. And he ended up reaching out to TIACS, and fortunately he, got his life back on track, and his mother basically has said to it that you rescued my son. And I
Awesome.
think a lot of the time it's just getting that mindset right where it's okay. It's okay to sort of share my story, but often it's just having somebody at the other end, or someone, a mentor or somebody, just to be able to just sit there and listen. And I think that's the key
Yeah.
is to it all, is that, it's okay to be vulnerable. It is okay to be, show vulnerability. And often, I know Ed, one of our co-founders, talks about the word vulnerability. And,
Yeah.
Dan and Ed, since, they lost their mate to suicide, still see a psych on a regular basis for their mental health. And
Yeah.
they're not ashamed about telling it. They put it out there all the time that, we still see somebody on a regular basis for our mental health. And, we wouldn't be able to get through what we do every day without that, that chat that we have with them on a regular basis.
I get people asking all the time if battery is up to the task for everyday commercial use, and there are still plenty of people who argue that battery is simply not a good solution for contractors. So let's cover a couple of these topics. 1. Not every lawn and garden business will get a benefit from using battery tools. You should ask the questions first about what sort of tasks they will be required to do, and I'm happy to answer some of these questions about what tasks are good for battery tools and which tasks should be left for petrol tools. 2. What benefits do you want from battery tools? Some businesses will experience a greater return on investment with battery tools. This can be measured financially, but sometimes needs to be measured in reduced risks and problems too. Work health safety benefits are measurable when talking about no exhaust burns, reduced noise, and the noise being further away from the operator's ears. Vibrations in your dominant and non-dominant arm will most likely be less with battery tools, but a change in the balance of tools or poorly maintained tools can result in more vibrations to your forward-reaching arm, regardless of if it's battery or petrol power. So, some easy tools to see the benefit with battery are hedge trimmers and handheld blowers, because the list of pros and cons seriously favour the battery tool over petrol. But whippersnippers and mowers often have the pendulum where the pros disappear as the runtime requirements increase or the load increases due to long grass. If you run one battery platform, you might find you initially needed 2 or 3 batteries, and now with a whippersnipper and a mower, you require 10 or even 20 batteries to get through a whole day. This can be the line in the sand for many businesses, but one way to avoid this is to charge on the go, or bring your charger to the properties where you spend long periods of time. I've been using a number of Ego tools now, and Ego is a dedicated battery power brand. When I need commercial battery solutions, Ego has a tool and battery and charging options that allow me to focus on getting the work done, and I don't have to worry about my day. 2 staff and 6 batteries keep me out of trouble and busy working.
Have you watched any Australian comedians?
I've watched a couple.
There's one, I'm not sure if it's Carl Barron, but there's one of the Australian comedians talks about the Australian lingo and Australian language for what things mean. And it's really obvious when you go, oh, she'll be right, mate, or it's okay, or whatever. There's a lot of negative talk in what we actually are portraying to be a positive. Oh, that's good, but it's not the word we use. We don't use the word good. We use the word, oh, it's just okay. It's okay to reach out. It shouldn't be it's okay to reach out. It should be it's awesome to reach out.
Yeah, totally.
It's life-changing to reach out.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that about that whole sort of way people see. I was at a expo last year, and someone walked past. It was a tradie walked past and saw me wearing one of the shirts, and they saw the shirts hanging up, and he walked past and he just started laughing, and he said, "You wouldn't catch me effing wearing one of those shirts." And I went, "Oh, okay." I said, "Cool, mate, no dramas." I said, "Do you know about the shirts?" And he goes, "No." I said, "Well, just give me 60 seconds and I'll give you a quick spiel." And, within around about 5 minutes later, after we'd had this in-depth conversation, he grabbed one of the cards to be able to jump online, the QR code to buy a shirt. And,
Nice.
It was one of those ones where it was that, that stoicism around, I'm not going to wear a funky, colorful shirt, and bring attention to myself. That's not me. But then,
Yep.
When we started having this conversation that, it was for mental health, and, he'd had his own sort of challenges in life. It was, and I think there's a lot of that bravado, stoicism,
Yep.
what you sort of say, that Australian sort of,
the phrase that might come up is that's not bad.
Yeah. And we've grown up with it,
Yeah.
It's like, just harden the F up, like
Yep.
it's okay, mate. It'll
Oh, yeah.
pass. And,
I love telling
we know
people
it
to take
doesn't.
a teaspoon of cement.
Yeah, yeah. Another classic.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So, yeah, I think that, well, I know the change in mindset makes a massive difference. I've seen how much I have turned some things in my life around just by changing my mindset. And yeah, that is without a doubt probably the best message we can give people right now in terms of going, okay, if you want to support TIACS, if you want to support Trade Mutt, that is awesome. But if you want to see a change in your own life, then start viewing these things as positive, start viewing these things as helpful, as reinforcing the positives and moving forward.
Definitely. And, give yourself a gift, give yourself an investment.
Yeah.
And think about yourself. And often, people will think that that's being selfish. It's not. It's actually you'll be better. You'll be a better version of yourself for your loved ones when you invest in yourself.
I had a pastor, and hopefully he's not listening to this, but pull me up one day, and he said, "Where were you the last couple of weeks?" And I said, "I went motorbike riding." He's like, "You should think about the example you're setting for your kids." And I was like, you know what? I didn't go to church because I needed to go for a motorbike ride. I am setting the best example for my kids by showing them that when I need to clear my head, I'm doing what I need to do.
Yeah. And doing what you love to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we should be prioritizing is going, you know what? I want to be there for my kids. I want to be there for my wife. I want to be there for my parents and my family and my friends. And the only way I can do that is by looking after myself first.
Yeah. So true. So
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. Jason, it's been good talking to you. We've broached an hour, almost an hour and 15 minutes at the moment. I love the topic. I think it's a topic that as tradies we need to talk about, like you say, like we've been saying for the last hour. Need to talk about it. Keep on talking about it. I particularly think it's important to break that cycle of people who are either intergenerational or they're in an industry where suck it up and don't talk about it. And that's why I do my podcast. So next time you're out there packing Trade Mutt orders, I can recommend a podcast for you to listen to.
Cool. Awesome. It's done.
Aussie Lawn
Locked in.
Stars.
Locked in.
Yeah. So, yeah, look, I appreciate your time, Jason, and it's been great talking to you. Is there any particular topics that we haven't really touched on so far? Anything you want to finish up on or something really important that we need to say?
No, I think we've covered it all. I just want to just put it out to all the listeners out there that if you or a loved one, just needs to have a chat, might be going through some different things within your life, and that you just need some support navigating it. Please do contact TIACS. 0488 46988. It's quite simple. It could be a simple text, because you're going to break down, set an example. There's my dog.
I've been waiting for my dogs to go off.
He thinks he's a guard dog. He's a bulldog. But you're really going to break down those barriers, and show other people that you're leading the way and you're leading your own mental health. So that's all I want to finish off with.
Yeah. So while we're finishing off, let's see if you can see my little guard dog there.
Oh, yeah.
He is an indoor dog, and guarantee you the moment he hears a noise outside, he'll be barking and guarding my house too.
Yeah, I think someone's just walked past the front, so I think that's why he's going off. So,
yeah, awesome. Hey, one last thing. You said the phone number 0488 46988. That is the support number people can call and people should call when they need help or before they need help. TIACS website, is it TIACS?
TIACS.org. Yep, TIACS.org.
Yep.
Head over there. There's all the information there about our service and how people can support us.
Yep.
And then if you're looking at getting a Trade Mutt shirt and jumping on board, just trademutt.com.
Yep.
Get access, and you can, they bring out a regular print. They're bringing out a new print pretty much every month at the moment. You can check out the new one that they just released this week.
Now, I've seen a couple of prints that I really liked, and then they disappeared before I bought them.
Oh, yes. Well, some of them they bring out limited edition and they just sell out so quickly. So
Yeah,
the one that I'm wearing at the moment, it's called Horizons. All the shirts have different names.
yeah,
They become limited editions. And we've actually got some Trade Mutt, we call them Trade Mutt Tragics or Trade Mutt fans.
yeah.
They've got over 100 of the different shirts that they've been put out since their boys launched the service. So,
Nice.
yeah, they become sought after.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, well, I know when I first came across TIACS, it was on another podcast. It was the South Australian landscaping guys down there.
Yeah.
Water Pro, Clint from Water Pro was talking to you. And I jumped on the Trade Mutt's website and showed my wife, and she was like, "Oh, those shirts are awesome." And I was like, "Yeah, maybe we should get a couple of shirts." And then before she could order a shirt, the print was gone.
Yeah, no, you'll find that the one that they just brought out this week is a really cool print. It's called Daryl Kerrigan, based off the Castle
Nice. Oh,
movie.
nice.
Listeners should jump in and check that out. But we appreciate any support that anybody can give to Trade Mutt, but also then any awareness that they can create about TIACS.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have fond memories of watching The Castle, and my younger brother's name is Dale, so regularly in my job, do a little bit of digging, and I'll shout out to a co-worker or I'll call my dad, "Hey, Dad, I dug a hole."
Love it. So good.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Jason. Appreciate your time. Hope you have a good afternoon, and keep your ears open for this episode to come out soon.
Thanks for having us, legend.
No worries. I'll get you to stay on the line for a second. I'm just going to press stop.
Thank you for listening to Aussie Lawn Stars. Please remember to rate and review the show on the Apple Podcasts app or the player you use. Exciting new shows are released every Monday. Make sure you follow or subscribe to hear the next episode.